Her daughter-in-law smiled as she handed over the brochure. "We've decided it's time to sell the farm," she said. Evelyn Parker, widow and quiet bookkeeper of her family's legacy, didn't argue. By sundown, she had already reactivated a mortgage her daughter-in-law's parents had long forgotten she owned. The land they thought they'd sold? Already funding Evelyn's chosen charities. The silence they mistook for surrender? That was strategy. And when they came to claim the farm, the trust would speak louder than any protest ever could. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The kitchen smelled like rain-soaked earth and old coffee when Lauren dropped her idea onto the table like a stone. "We should sell the farm," she said, voice polished, rehearsed, and unshakably confident. "There's no future in land anymore. Not like this." Nathan froze mid-stir, spoon clinking against his mug. He didn't look at his mother, just stared at the dark swirl inside his coffee as though it might give him permission to agree. Evelyn Parker sat across from them, spine straight, hands folded over a crisp linen napkin. Outside the window, acres of rolling pasture caught the late afternoon light, the same gold her husband had loved to chase until dusk. She didn't answer. Lauren leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We could invest? Something modern. Clean energy? Short-term rentals? Whatever's hot right now. It's just wasted potential sitting here." Her smile was all efficiency and ambition, the kind Evelyn recognized from women who thought charm was currency. Nathan finally cleared his throat. "It's a big change, Lauren. Mom—" He stopped there. Evelyn raised one brow, calm as still water. Lauren pressed on. "Your dad's gone. The maintenance is endless, and taxes keep rising. We can't cling to nostalgia forever. Don't you think your mom deserves some peace? Less work? Less worry?" Evelyn's mouth curved faintly. "Peace," she echoed, the word tasting like something foreign. Nathan reached for her hand, tentative. "Mom, maybe it's time. I know how much this place means to you, but—" She withdrew her hand gently, like pulling a thread from old fabric. "You don't have to explain, Nathan. I understand what she's asking." Lauren smiled, triumphant too soon. "So you agree?" Evelyn didn't answer. She rose, slow but steady, and crossed to the sink. The faucet squeaked. Water ran. Her reflection in the window showed no anger, no grief, only calculation. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft enough to make them both lean forward. "Do what you think is best," she said. "You're adults now." Lauren beamed, already fishing her phone from her purse. "Perfect. I'll reach out to an agent tomorrow." Nathan exhaled, shoulders sagging as if the air had been waiting to leave him. Evelyn dried her hands on a dish towel, eyes fixed on the field outside. The last of the light slid across the barn roof, and for a second she imagined her husband there, arms folded, watching, silent like always when fools made their first move. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. "Marlene, you've got a plan, right?" Evelyn smiled without meaning to. She didn't reply, just tucked the phone away and walked toward her late husband's office. The room still smelled faintly of tobacco and ledger paper. Dust motes drifted through a single beam of light cutting across the big oak desk. She sat, pulled open the drawer that hadn't been touched in years, and began sorting through the familiar chaos. Tax records, deeds, receipts with faded ink. Her fingers paused over one yellowing folder marked Mortgage Files, 1998. Curiosity slowed her breath. She flipped it open. Inside were a few notarized pages, her late husband's signature beside hers. She traced the names on the document. Frank and Margaret Benson, Lauren's parents. Evelyn leaned back, the chair creaking in quiet revelation. The mortgage balance, modest back then, had ballooned over the years through interest and extensions. But the ownership transfer, her ownership, was still active, filed under a subsidiary account she had nearly forgotten. Outside, the first rumble of thunder rolled over the fields. Evelyn stared at the papers, pulse steady. Lauren's laughter carried faintly from the kitchen. Bright, careless, certain of her victory. Evelyn closed the folder, her fingers tightening just once before relaxing. Peace, she murmured again, though now it sounded like a promise rather than a surrender. She slipped the documents into her leather satchel, smoothed her hair, and walked back down the hallway. Nathan and Lauren were still talking about open houses and market timing. Evelyn poured herself a fresh cup of coffee, the clink of the spoon loud in the silence that followed their excitement. "Whatever you two decide," she said lightly, "make sure you read everything carefully." Lauren nodded, distracted. "Of course. I handle all the paperwork." Evelyn turned toward the window where the storm clouds gathered over her land. "I know," she said quietly. "You always do." Outside, a single drop hit the glass, then another. And Evelyn smiled, the way a chess player does when she realizes the board was hers all along. By the next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind air that smelled like wet cedar and clean beginnings, though Evelyn knew better than to mistake that for peace. Nathan stood in the doorway of the kitchen, paperwork in hand, the county seal shining under the weak morning light. His eyes were puffy from a night without rest. "Mom," he said quietly, "the realtor dropped these off. Just needs a few signatures." Evelyn looked up from her coffee. She didn't touch the pen he held out. "Yours or mine?" "Just mine and Lauren's," he said. "You're still listed on the deed, but it's more of a formality. The sale won't close without your release, but the listing itself—" "I see." Her tone didn't rise, didn't dip. It was the same one she used when balancing accounts. Neutral, steady, giving nothing away. Lauren breezed in from the mudroom wearing a soft pink sweater that looked more suited for brunch than farm work. "Good morning," she sang, as if the whole house hadn't tilted overnight. "I already talked to the agent. He's excited. The market's perfect right now." She slid a glossy brochure onto the counter. "Parker Farm," it read in bold green letters. "Historic land, modern potential." Evelyn read it once, then set it aside. Lauren perched beside Nathan, pulling out her phone. "We should post something online," she said, thumb flying. "Let people know it's coming soon. Get a buzz going." Within minutes, her voice echoed through the kitchen again as she read aloud. "Parker Farm on the market. Prime location. Endless opportunity." She smiled, satisfied, and hit share. Evelyn took another sip of coffee, hiding her smirk behind the rim. "Endless opportunity," she repeated softly. "That's one way to look at it." When they finally left, Nathan's arm loosely around Lauren's waist, her laughter trailing through the doorway, Evelyn rose and went straight to her husband's office. The folder still sat where she had left it. She laid it open, spreading the papers like puzzle pieces. The handwriting, the notary stamps, the tiny addenda scrawled in margins, all perfectly valid. She cross-referenced every clause against her farm's existing deeds. Her eyes caught the phrasing her husband had once insisted on. "Right of ownership transfer, at discretion of primary holder." "Discretion," she whispered. "That was always your word, wasn't it, Henry?" Her phone buzzed again. "Marlene. Coffee's ready if you need a break from plotting." Evelyn smiled, slipping on her cardigan before stepping out into the morning chill. Marlene's porch smelled of cinnamon and oak. The older woman sat waiting, 2 steaming mugs in hand. "You didn't sleep, did you?" she said, reading Evelyn's face like an open page. "I didn't need to," Evelyn replied, sitting beside her. "They've already started digging their own hole." Marlene chuckled. They never saw this coming. Evelyn nodded, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. No, she said. They saw an old woman too tired to fight. That's what makes it easier. They sat in companionable silence, the hum of cicadas rising with the sun. Then Evelyn checked her watch. Time to call the bank. Back home, she dialed a number from the old mortgage papers. A pleasant voice answered. Clara Chen, Citizens Bank, residential loans. This is Evelyn Parker, she said evenly. I'm calling regarding the Benson mortgage, account number 2794. There was a pause as Clara typed. Ah, yes. Still active. Payments are current. Evelyn leaned back, smiling faintly. I need to confirm something. The mortgage was transferred to my name in 2004 through a holding account. Does that still stand? Clara hesitated. Let me verify. Yes, Mrs. Parker. It appears you're the full holder. Everything's legal and current. Is there a problem? Not at all, Evelyn said, her voice as calm as her heartbeat. In fact, it's reassuring. Would you like to make any changes to the payment routing? Not yet, but soon. She hung up, staring at the rain-darkened glass of her window. The farm looked peaceful again, falsely so, like a sleeping predator. Evelyn opened her notebook and began to write in deliberate strokes. Step 1. Confirm ownership. Step 2. Prepare activation documents. Step 3. Wait. When the ink dried, she folded the page and slipped it beneath the mortgage folder. Her reflection in the glass caught her eye, composed, certain, unmovable. She whispered to the empty room, You think you're selling my farm, Lauren, but I've already bought your family's future. Outside, a crow landed on the fence post, black wings gleaming under the gray sky. It cawed once, a sharp, echoing sound that felt like approval. Evelyn smiled, slow and sure, before reaching for the phone again. Gregory, she said when her attorney picked up. It's time we reviewed a few old documents. Quietly. The pen in her hand tapped twice on the table, one for the farm, one for the mortgage. The game had begun. Saturday arrived crisp and clear, the kind of morning that made the land look like a painting no one wanted to sell. Dew silvered every blade of grass, and the barns, weathered but proud, caught the sunlight as if showing off for strangers. By 8:30, cars began to roll up the gravel drive. SUVs and sedans, some new enough to gleam, others still smelling of ambition. Lauren fluttered at the front porch in a white blouse and tight jeans, the practiced hostess. Nathan followed her lead, smiling too hard, his shoulders stiff beneath his flannel. Evelyn watched from the kitchen window, teacup steady in her hand. They're early, Nathan muttered, glancing toward the drive. Lauren smoothed her hair. Serious buyers come early. It's a good sign. She turned toward the house, calling out brightly, Evelyn, they're here. Evelyn stepped out onto the porch, the soft scrape of her shoes on the old board sounding almost ceremonial. So I see, she said mildly. Her gaze swept over the small crowd, investors in business casual, a young couple taking photos, a woman in expensive boots whispering numbers to her husband. The realtor, a man with a clipboard and a permanent smile, started his spiel. Folks, welcome to Parker Farm, 200 acres of prime Pennsylvania soil, ready for development or continued agriculture. The choice is yours. Evelyn's lips twitched at that. The choice is yours, he'd said, an assumption she'd let him keep. Lauren took over the tour like a campaign manager. This property's been in the Parker family for generations, she announced. But Nathan and I are ready for a fresh start. We believe it's time to let new vision breathe life into this place. Nathan's nod was almost apologetic. Mom's been incredible with it, but, yeah, it's time. Evelyn said nothing. The way Lauren said fresh start made her fingers itch. She held her cup tighter instead. As the group moved toward the barns, Evelyn stayed behind, pulling out a small leather notebook from her sweater pocket. Her neat handwriting filled the page as she noted faces, names, license plates, even small overheard remarks. She wasn't nosy, she was strategic. She wanted to know who these people were, the ones eager to own what she'd built her life around. The realtor's voice carried from the field. Plenty of potential for solar development, great tax credits out here. Lauren's laugh followed, too loud, too self-assured. Exactly what I told Nathan, this land could be worth triple in a few years. Evelyn smiled faintly. Yes, she murmured to herself, to someone. Her phone buzzed, a text from Gregory Lane. Gregory. Reviewed the Benson mortgage this morning. Clauses intact. No exposure on your end. Evelyn. And control? Gregory. Absolute. You can activate whenever you wish. She locked the screen and slipped the phone away. The kettle whistled softly behind her, like an approving sigh. An hour later, the cars were gone, leaving tire marks across the gravel and a faint echo of laughter in the distance. Nathan was pacing the porch. Lauren scrolled through her phone, cheeks flushed from excitement. They loved it, Lauren said. The young couple said they're sending an offer today. This could move fast, Nathan. Yeah. His tone carried both awe and doubt. Fast. Evelyn stepped out with a tray. Tea for her, coffee for them. So, she said, setting it down carefully, you're selling your father's life's work in record time. Impressive. Lauren took a cup without catching the edge in Evelyn's tone. Thank you, Evelyn. We're doing what's practical. It's progress. Evelyn nodded. Progress always sounds good until you see the bill. The door creaked open behind her. Marlene slipped in, holding a manila envelope. I figured you'd be here, she said, handing it to Evelyn. Updates from the bank. Clara says the mortgage file's been archived and verified. Ownership undisputed. Lauren looked up. Mortgage file? Evelyn smiled pleasantly. Just some old paperwork I needed confirmed. Nathan didn't question it, though his eyes lingered on her longer than before. When Lauren stepped away to call the realtor again, Evelyn turned to Marlene, lowering her voice. You saw them out there. She's already picturing herself spending money she doesn't have. Marlene grinned. Let her picture it. Imagination's free. Evelyn's gaze drifted across the field again, to where the buyers had walked earlier. Her voice softened. Henry used to say you never lose land, you just lend it to time. He was right. Marlene nodded. And time seems to owe you a favor. Evelyn took her teacup back inside, the last of the steam curling through the air. On the table, her notebook lay open beside the mortgage documents and a folded letter from Gregory. She tapped a finger against the page marked activation date, TBD. The sound of Lauren laughing again drifted through the open window, sweet and grating all at once. Evelyn closed the notebook with a soft snap. Soon, she whispered. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the porch swing chain. One sharp metallic creak, as if something old had just started to wake. By midweek, the farmhouse had the quiet hum of paperwork, pages turning, pens scratching, printers spitting out thin white promises. Evelyn sat at the dining table, glasses perched low on her nose, as Gregory Lane spread out a stack of neatly organized documents between them. Everything's drafted as discussed, Gregory said, his tone low but certain. The buyers are legitimate. The contract looks clean from their end. Evelyn poured him coffee, slow and deliberate. And ours? He slid a particular sheet toward her, tapping the last clause near the bottom. Your portion is protected. The mortgage activation can be triggered upon sale completion. They'll never notice it. It's buried under standard legal phrasing. Her eyes scanned the print, crisp and sharp. Transfer of funds upon closing. Secondary mortgage claim executed by standing holder. Irrevocable trust compliance clause. She looked up. You've hidden it well. Gregory allowed himself a small smile. Buried treasure, Mrs. Parker. You taught me well. Lauren's voice rang from the foyer before Evelyn could reply. Gregory, so glad you could make it. She swept in like a realtor herself, perfume and self-satisfaction trailing behind. I hope Mom's not making you work too hard. We just want to get this done without any fuss. Evelyn didn't correct her use of Mom. She simply folded her hands and said, Gregory doesn't fuss. That's why I trust him. Lauren took that as agreement, not warning. Perfect. I'll get Nathan. He's just finishing a call. She disappeared upstairs, humming. When the echo of her steps faded, Gregory leaned closer. Once Nathan signs, it's official. She won't even realize her parents' mortgage moved to active status until the bank contacts them. Let's keep it that way, Evelyn said softly. Timing matters. Marlene's head appeared in the doorway, carrying a folder and a grin. If timing matters, then you're about to enjoy perfect symmetry. She set the folder beside Gregory's stack. I brought the updated mortgage paperwork Clara finalized. Clean signatures, all verified. Evelyn flipped through the pages briefly. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. Her initials beside every claim, her authority confirmed in neat legal ink. Marlene leaned on the chair back, voice light but sly. Do they even know what they're stepping into? Evelyn's lips curved into something between amusement and pity. No, Marlene. And that's what makes it art. The clock ticked twice before Nathan finally entered, hair slightly damp, tie crooked. He looked tired, more tired than a man his age should. Sorry I'm late, he said. Lauren wanted me to double-check the listing one more time. Gregory handed him a pen. Just sign on page 8, Mr. Parker. Everything's ready for escrow. Nathan scanned the top of the page, then the bottom. He didn't linger on the dense paragraphs between. You're sure this is standard? Absolutely, Gregory replied smoothly. Lauren reappeared just as Nathan pressed the pen to paper. Finally, she chirped. We'll have the funds before month's end. Isn't that exciting? Evelyn didn't answer. She simply stood, gathered the signed pages, and slid them back into Gregory's folder. Exciting, she repeated, her tone neutral but edged with something sharp. When the couple left to celebrate with takeout, Evelyn followed Gregory and Marlene into the study. The air smelled faintly of old cedar and ink. She opened a drawer, pulled out the manila envelope that contained the Benson mortgage, and laid it flat on the desk. Activate it, she said. Gregory's brows lifted. You're certain? Before closing? Yes, she said. It will post to my account as pending. By the time the sale clears, the funds will route automatically. Marlene gave a low whistle. Cold move, Evelyn. I love it. Evelyn smoothed the page edges with a single stroke of her hand. Not cold. Calculated. Gregory packed his briefcase, his motions efficient. I'll file the necessary notice with the county clerk's office first thing tomorrow. No one will question it. It reads like a routine update. Evelyn walked him to the door, her eyes following the path of his taillights until they disappeared down the dark lane. Then she turned back to Marlene, who was sipping tea from a mug that said, "Best secrets are shared over coffee." You think she'll ever understand? Marlene asked quietly. Evelyn shook her head. Understanding requires humility. She doesn't have the vocabulary. They both laughed softly, the sound blending with the rustle of the farmhouse settling around them. Later that night, when the house fell still, Evelyn slipped out with a coat thrown over her nightdress. The moonlight painted the gravel drive in silver as she crossed to her car. Inside, on the passenger seat, sat a sealed envelope addressed to County Recorder's office. Private filing. She drove the 3 miles to town, the only sound the rhythmic click of her turn signal. The courthouse loomed like a shadowed sentinel when she arrived. She slid the envelope into the overnight drop slot, her breath fogging in the cool night air. As it disappeared into the chute, she whispered, "All debts come due eventually." When she turned back toward the car, a gust of wind swept through the trees, scattering a few dry leaves across the courthouse steps. They swirled in tight circles before settling, like the closing of a deal no one else knew had just been made. By dawn, the paperwork was filed, and by the end of the week, the trap would be set. The wire transfer hit on a Thursday morning, as quietly as a shadow moving across the floor. No fanfare, no phone call, just a notification that blinked once on Evelyn's laptop. Parker Farm. Payment received. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then reached for her tea. "And there it is," she murmured. "The end of one story and the beginning of another." Across town, in the glossy kitchen of their suburban home, Lauren squealed as the realtor's message pinged her phone. "It's done!" she shouted, spinning toward Nathan. "The buyers deposited the full amount. We're officially free." Nathan managed a tired smile. "Guess that's it, huh? No turning back." Lauren wrapped her arms around him. "This is the best decision we've ever made. We'll pay off a few things, reinvest, maybe even—" She broke off mid-sentence, grinning at her reflection in the stainless steel fridge. "We're not the farm family anymore. We're the Parkers. Investors." Nathan chuckled softly but didn't echo the sentiment. His eyes drifted toward the old framed photo of his father hanging near the pantry. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Investors." Back at the farmhouse, Evelyn sat at her husband's old desk, the morning light cutting through the window blinds in slanted bars. Gregory Lane's voice hummed from the speakerphone. "It's official," he said. "The buyer's funds cleared escrow at 9:02 a.m. The county has acknowledged receipt of sale. You're no longer the recorded owner of Parker Farm." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Except in the ways that matter." Gregory's chuckle was dry. "You're ready to proceed with the activation, then?" "Already done," she said, sliding a form into her fax machine. "Clara confirmed the mortgage reroute this morning." The fax machine hummed, spitting out the confirmation sheet with her signature, Evelyn L. Parker, stamped clean and final at the bottom. Within an hour, the mortgage on Frank and Margaret Benson's home, Lauren's parents, was redirected. The next scheduled payment wouldn't go to the usual account, it would go to Evelyn's. By noon, Lauren's phone began lighting up. "Mom?" she answered breathlessly. "You're breaking up." "What? What do you mean the payment bounced?" Nathan looked up from his laptop. "What's going on?" Lauren frowned, already scrolling. "My parents' mortgage payment got rerouted. The bank said something about a new payee authorization. That can't be right." She called again, voice sharper. "Clara, this is Lauren Parker. My parents' mortgage account. Why was the payment redirected?" Clara's calm, professional tone carried through the speaker. "Mrs. Parker, the ownership of that mortgage was transferred over 2 decades ago. The current holder exercised her right to receive payment directly. It's standard procedure." "Current holder?" Lauren's voice cracked. "Who?" A pause. Then Clara answered gently, "Evelyn Parker." The color drained from Lauren's face. That can't be possible." Nathan stood, confusion warring with disbelief. "Mom owns your parents' mortgage?" Lauren's hands shook as she gripped her phone. "She can't. That has to be illegal." Just then, Evelyn's name appeared on her caller ID. Lauren stared at it, trembling. "She knows," she whispered. Nathan answered instead. "Mom?" Evelyn's tone was composed, almost kind. "I wanted to make sure everything went smoothly this morning. Did the sale deposit reach your account?" "Yeah, it did," Nathan said carefully. "But Lauren's parents, what's happening with their mortgage?" "The bank said that I'm the holder?" Evelyn finished for him. Yes, dear. Your father and I extended that loan to them years ago. I just never saw the need to collect. Until now. Lauren snatched the phone. You can't do this, she snapped. That's my parents' home. It's my mortgage, Evelyn replied evenly, and as of this morning, I've chosen to exercise my rights. Nothing illegal about that. You're destroying them. No, Evelyn said. I'm teaching them. And you. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Nathan finally spoke, voice unsteady. Mom, you can do that? Gregory's voice entered the conversation firm and cool. Legally and cleanly, yes. The precedent was established long ago. Mrs. Parker's claim predates all subsequent liens or transactions. It's airtight. Lauren's breath hitched. So that's why you were so calm? You planned this. Evelyn didn't deny it. Lauren, dear, when you marry into a family, you inherit its history. You might have done well to read ours before trying to sell it. From across the table, Marlene's laugh broke the tension, low, wicked, and delighted. She'd been listening on speaker from Evelyn's end. Control is quiet, she said, raising her coffee mug, but absolute. Lauren hung up without replying, her chest rising and falling like she'd just run a mile. Nathan stood frozen, eyes glassy with realization. She played us, he whispered. Lauren spun toward him, desperate. We can fight it, right? We can stop her? Nathan hesitated. Maybe, but I don't think she left any loose ends. At that exact moment, Evelyn reached across her desk, pressing her palm to the cool surface of the deed folder that once bore her husband's name. Through the window, she could see the fields beyond, the soil no longer hers on paper, yet still answering to her heart. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant, like applause muffled by distance. She closed her eyes, whispering to no one and to everyone, checkmate. And miles away, in a suburban kitchen where panic had taken the place of triumph, Lauren's phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from her parents' joint account. Account frozen. Pending ownership confirmation. The screen dimmed, and Lauren's reflection stared back, small, helpless, and cornered. She sank into the nearest chair, whispering, "She took everything." The sound of the storm rolled in from the horizon, steady and unstoppable. The first twist had landed. By Friday morning, panic had settled into Lauren's bones like a fever that wouldn't break. She sat at the marble island in her spotless kitchen, laptop open, eyes wild as she clicked through her parents' bank portal again and again. Error, restricted access, contact loan holder. Her mother's voice crackled over speakerphone. Lauren, honey, they said the payment was reversed. The bank froze our checking account until it's resolved. They won't tell us why. Lauren rubbed at her temple. I'm working on it, Mom. It's just some clerical thing. I'll fix it. But even as she said it, she didn't believe herself. She was already dialing Clara Chen's direct line. Citizens Bank. This is Clara. Clara, it's Lauren Parker again. We spoke yesterday. Yes, Mrs. Parker, Clara said smoothly. How can I help you today? I need you to undo whatever my mother-in-law filed. My parents' account. She can't have access to that money. There was a pause long enough to make Lauren's pulse spike. Mrs. Parker, the documents Mrs. Evelyn Parker submitted are fully executed. She's the legal mortgage holder. The system reflects her as the payee. I can't override it. Lauren gripped the counter, her voice trembling. Then escalate it. Someone has to be able to reverse this. I'm sorry, Clara said gently. This isn't reversible. It's not a mistake. Lauren's voice broke into a whisper. You don't understand. That money was supposed to help us. It was supposed to... I do understand, Clara said. And I'd advise you to speak with Mrs. Parker directly. She's very thorough. The call ended. Lauren sat there staring at the phone as if it had betrayed her too. When Nathan walked in, she was already crying. Quiet, furious tears she couldn't hide. "She took their money," she said. "My parents can't even access their checking account. The mortgage payments go straight to her." Nathan rubbed the back of his neck. "I'll go talk to her." "Talk to her?" Lauren's laugh came out cracked and bitter. "She's not going to undo this because you asked nicely. She planned it, Nathan. Every step." He didn't answer. The shame in his silence was enough. That afternoon, the gravel crunched beneath Nathan's truck tires as he pulled into the long drive of his childhood home. The farmhouse stood calm against the gray horizon, windows glowing warm like nothing had changed. Evelyn was on the porch, trimming the dead heads from her chrysanthemums. She didn't look surprised to see him. "You always drive faster when you're upset," she said, without turning. "Mom," Nathan began, his voice already breaking. "You have to give that mortgage back. Lauren's parents. This is killing them." She set the shears aside and faced him, her expression calm as Sunday morning. "No one's dying, Nathan. They're just paying what they owe. This isn't about money." "It's exactly about money," Evelyn said evenly. "It's about respect, about consequences." Nathan stepped closer. "You don't need to teach anyone a lesson. You've already won." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Winning implies competition. I just secured what was mine." Inside, Marlene sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. She looked up as Nathan stormed in. "You look like a man who just discovered his mother's sharper than the devil." He glared. "This isn't funny, Marlene." "Oh, I'm not laughing at you, sweetheart," she said, setting down her mug. "I'm laughing at Lauren. She thought she could outwit a woman who's been balancing ledgers since before she could drive." Through the window, they could see Evelyn at her desk again, sorting papers into tidy stacks. Marlene's eyes narrowed with curiosity. "What's she doing now?" Nathan exhaled. "I don't know. Something with the sale money, I think." Marlene grinned. "Then you should be proud. She's turning that windfall into armor." Evelyn worked in silence, her pen moving with mechanical precision. Wire transfer authorizations, beneficiary forms, donation requests addressed to 3 local charities: the Veterans Foundation, the Public Library, the Church Renovation Fund. Every dollar accounted for. Her late husband used to say, "Money's only powerful when it moves with purpose." Now Evelyn understood the true meaning of that. By sundown, the last envelope was sealed, each stamped in gold ink with her initials, ELP. As she rose from the desk, her phone buzzed again. Lauren, the 10th missed call of the day. She let it ring. Moments later, a new text came through instead. "Lauren, you've gone too far. You're ruining everything. I'll find a way to undo this." Evelyn stared at the words, unmoved. Then another message appeared, frantic, almost pleading. "Lauren, please. My parents are terrified. They can't pay. We'll lose the house." Evelyn typed slowly, deliberately. "Evelyn, actions have consequences. You taught me that when you sold mine." Then she put the phone face down and returned to her tea. Outside, the sky deepened to indigo, a single light glowing from the old barn like an ember that refused to die. Marlene stepped out onto the porch beside her, folding her arms. "You're calmer than I expected," she said. Evelyn sipped her tea. "Because it's done. The money's moving where it should." Marlene tilted her head, watching her friend's steady profile against the fading light. And her? Evelyn's eyes tracked the horizon. She'll learn what loss feels like, the kind that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. A car's headlights appeared far down the road, Lauren's maybe, coming fast. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "She'll come here tonight," she murmured. "She'll beg." Marlene smirked. "And you?" "I'll offer her tea," Evelyn said, her tone smooth as glass. "Nothing more. The headlights drew closer, two white eyes cutting through the dusk. Evelyn set her cup down with care, the china making a soft final click against the saucer. The night, it seemed, was ready for its next move. Sunday came dressed like forgiveness, sunlight soft on the porch railings, the scent of baked bread sneaking through open windows. But Evelyn knew better. Forgiveness was the last thing on the menu. The long oak table was set for 6. The farmhouse looked almost festive, candles trimmed, napkins folded just so. To anyone else, it might have looked like a peace offering. To Evelyn, it was a stage. She adjusted the last fork's alignment, then stepped back. "Perfect," she murmured. Marlene entered through the back door carrying a pie still warm enough to perfume the whole kitchen. "You sure about this?" she asked, setting it down. "Dinner with the wolves before the moon's even up?" Evelyn smiled faintly. A show needs its audience. By 6 o'clock, Nathan's truck rolled up the drive, Lauren's sleek SUV close behind. Evelyn could see them through the window, Lauren gesturing wildly, Nathan rubbing the back of his neck like a man walking into a courtroom. When the door opened, Lauren's voice arrived first, bright, strained. "Evelyn, you look wonderful. I can't believe you went to all this trouble." Evelyn offered her a cool smile. "It's been a long week. I thought we should all share a meal, celebrate new beginnings." Lauren froze for half a second, unsure whether that was kindness or threat, then plastered on a smile. "Of course. That's lovely." Nathan set down a bottle of wine, his eyes darting toward his mother. "Mom, this isn't about dinner," Evelyn interrupted smoothly, taking the bottle. "It's about dinner." Marlene busied herself pouring drinks, the clink of crystal echoing like punctuation marks in the uneasy quiet. They sat. The roast chicken gleamed under the soft light. The wine breathed. The silence stretched thin as glass. Lauren was the first to break it, her tone sugary but cautious. "You really outdid yourself. Brought a little something too." She slid a small gift bag across the table, fancy packaging, shallow apology. "Just a little thank you for being understanding." Evelyn glanced inside. A candle, vanilla bean and amber. "How thoughtful," she said, then set it aside without lighting it. Nathan tried to smile. "Mom, this looks incredible. You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to," Evelyn said, slicing neatly into the roast. "Family dinners remind us what's worth keeping." Across the table, Marlene coughed lightly, disguising a smirk behind her napkin. She'd been jotting small notes in her planner all evening, reactions, timing, expressions, as if documenting a performance. Lauren's forced cheer, Nathan's growing discomfort, Evelyn's serene detachment. When the meal was nearly done, Evelyn poured herself another glass of wine and leaned back, her gaze sweeping over the table. "To change," she said softly, raising the glass, "to learning what's earned and what's owed." Lauren hesitated, then lifted her own glass. "To family," she countered. Evelyn's smile deepened just enough to sting. "To family," she agreed. The clink of crystal echoed like a gavel. As they ate, the tension became something almost tangible. Nathan picked at his plate, avoiding his wife's eyes. Lauren kept talking, her words tumbling faster now. Plans, ideas, anything to fill the silence. She described new business ventures, property investments, vacations she hadn't booked, but desperately wanted to believe in. Evelyn just listened, her wine untouched, her expression unreadable. When Lauren paused to take a sip, Marlene leaned over with her familiar conspiratorial grin. "You've had quite a week, haven't you, dear?" Lauren blinked. "Excuse me?" "I just meant," Marlene said, stirring her tea. "So much happening at once. The sale, the finances, all those unexpected developments." Nathan shot her a look that begged her to stop. Evelyn's fingers traced the rim of her glass. Yes, unexpected, she echoed. Life has a way of showing you where the cracks are, doesn't it? Lauren forced a laugh. Well, I prefer to think of them as opportunities. Evelyn's voice was gentle, but her words landed like small blades. That's what you said about the farm. The silence afterward hummed, low and sharp. Nathan swallowed hard, then leaned toward his mother, voice barely above a whisper. Mom, they'll never see this coming. Evelyn didn't answer. She only turned her head slightly, eyes flicking toward the window where the last trace of daylight had bled away. Lauren, misreading the moment, reached for Evelyn's hand. We'll make it through this, okay? Family sticks together. Evelyn looked at her hand but didn't take it. Family does, she said quietly. But alliances, those change. Marlene set down her pen. Showtime, she murmured. Before Lauren could respond, Evelyn's phone buzzed on the table. A message flashed across the screen, bright and damning. County records. Property line officially transferred to E.L. Parker. Effective immediately. Lauren's eyes caught it before Evelyn could lock the screen. What was that? Evelyn met her gaze over the rim of her glass, her tone calm, measured, final. You'll find out soon enough. Then she took a slow sip of wine. The candlelight flickering across her face like the smallest of smiles. Outside, wind began to rattle the window panes again, like applause from ghosts. And at that table, still and perfect in its arrangement, Lauren realized she wasn't dining with family anymore. She was dining with her reckoning. Morning crept in slow, pale, and cold, the kind of gray light that made everything look like a memory. Evelyn sat in her study, surrounded by open folders and steaming coffee. The farmhouse quiet except for the rhythmic scratch of her pen against paper. Citizens Bank, came Clara Chen's calm voice through the speakerphone. This is Clara. Good morning, dear, Evelyn said, her tone light, almost grandmotherly. I wanted to confirm the adjustments we discussed. The Benson mortgage. Payments should now be directed to my account exclusively. Yes? Clara typed, her fingers clicking faintly. That's correct, Mrs. Parker. The previous access permissions have been fully revoked. You're the sole payee, with full collection rights. The change took effect midnight. Good, Evelyn said. And the trust integration? Filed. Gregory Lane's office submitted everything last night. It's all airtight. Evelyn smiled. That's what I like to hear. She ended the call, leaned back in her chair, and looked toward the window. Outside, the frost still clung to the edges of the glass like lace. She reached for her husband's old fountain pen, the one with the gold nib, and drew a single check mark beside Phase 2. Control complete. Down the hill, Nathan's truck rumbled into the driveway. He stepped out hesitantly, jacket unzipped despite the chill. His mother met him at the door before he could knock. Coffee? She offered. He nodded, looking tired, wary. Lauren's trying to reach you. I know, Evelyn said, pouring him a cup. She's called 12 times. You're not going to answer? Not today. She set the mug down in front of him, steady hands, calm eyes. There's nothing to discuss. Nathan hesitated, watching her as if trying to locate some trace of softness in her expression. She's falling apart, Mom. Her parents are scared out of their minds. They've always paid on time. Evelyn cut him off gently. And they'll continue to. But this time, the money will go where it belongs. Nathan exhaled, his voice low. You really planned this out, didn't you? Evelyn didn't answer. Instead, she crossed to the desk where Gregory's folders were stacked neatly. As if summoned by name, the phone rang again. Gregory Lane, punctual as ever. Evelyn answered on speaker. Morning, Mrs. Parker, he said, The trust is finalized. We've closed every possible loophole. The mortgage funds, once rooted, will be protected under your charitable trust. Even if they tried to contest it, the ownership transfer would stand. Perfect, Evelyn said. Thank you, Gregory. You've earned your coffee for the day. Marlene, perched on the window seat with her ever-present notepad, raised an eyebrow. So, all the locks are in place? Evelyn smiled. Every last one. Marlene grinned. You're terrifying when you're efficient. I'm consistent, Evelyn corrected. Consistently terrifying, Marlene said, and took a long sip of her tea. You know, patience really is a weapon. You waited 20 years for this moment. Evelyn glanced toward her, one brow raised. And I never once missed my aim. The phone on the counter buzzed again. Lauren, for the 13th time. Evelyn silenced it without looking. Outside, a hawk circled above the far pasture, its shadow sliding over the fields like a warning. Nathan rubbed his temples. Mom, she's not going to let this go quietly. She's talking about lawyers. She can talk about whatever she likes, Evelyn replied. Words aren't weapons when the paperwork's already filed. He looked at her, half in awe, half in dread. You sound just like Dad. Her lips softened. Then he'd be proud. As Nathan left, the silence folded back over the house. Marlene watched Evelyn pull out a new folder, cream-colored, embossed with her initials. What's that one? Marlene asked. Evelyn began to write in neat, deliberate strokes. Future adjustments. Adjustments? For inheritance, Evelyn said. I'm rewriting the trust. Nathan will still inherit his portion, but not through her. Lauren won't touch a cent of what's left. Marlene leaned forward, a glint of amusement in her eyes. You're not just reclaiming the past, you're securing the future. Evelyn smiled. Control isn't revenge, it's correction. For the next hour, she drafted letter after letter, addressed to the attorney, the accountant, the county registrar. Each one sealed with that same gold wax stamp. By noon, the sun had risen high enough to cast sharp shadows across the desk. The farmhouse glowed in the quiet rhythm of order restored. Then, the peace fractured. Her phone buzzed again, this time not with a call, but with a text alert from the bank. Evelyn opened it, her eyes narrowing. Unauthorized access attempt detected. Account, Parker Trust the 3147. Origin, Lancaster Suburban IP. Lauren. Evelyn stared at the message, the corner of her mouth curling, not in fear, but in satisfaction. And so, she murmured, the child makes her first desperate move. Marlene looked up from her crossword. Trouble? Expected, Evelyn said, standing. She reached for her coat, calm as ever. I think it's time I paid Clara another visit. Marlene chuckled, sliding her notebook shut. God help the girl, she's about to learn what leverage really feels like. Evelyn paused at the doorway, her gaze steady, her voice quiet but edged in steel. No, Marlene, she's about to learn what helplessness feels like. Outside, the hawk dipped low over the fields again, its wings catching the winter sun. And as Evelyn stepped out into the cold air, the farmhouse behind her seemed to exhale, a fortress closing its gates. The knock came just as the kettle began to sing. Evelyn didn't rush to answer it. She let the whistle fill the kitchen until it grew shrill enough to mirror the tension pressing against the door. When she finally opened it, Nathan stood on the porch, his jaw tight. Behind him, Lauren's expression was brittle. Anger stretched thin over fear. Her phone was clutched in her hand like a weapon. You blocked our access, Lauren said, her voice sharp, trembling. The bank says you changed every authorization. My parents can't even make a withdrawal now. You had no right. Evelyn stepped aside calmly. Come in before you freeze. Lauren hesitated, then pushed past her. Nathan followed, silent. The farmhouse was warm, scented faintly with cinnamon and fresh coffee. Marlene sat by the window, knitting as if the world outside hadn't started to crack. Gregory Lane stood near the hearth, papers in hand, looking every bit the lawyer he was, precise, unbothered, ready. Evelyn poured tea, each motion measured. "Would anyone like some?" Lauren turned on her. "This isn't tea time, Evelyn. You've trapped my family's finances. You've stolen from them." Evelyn stirred her cup once, twice, before replying. "Stolen? No. Exercised my rights. Your parents signed the mortgage with your father-in-law years ago. The terms were clear. I've simply chosen to enforce them." Nathan stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Mom, you've gone too far. They'll lose their house. They—" Gregory interrupted smoothly. "Actually, no one's losing anything, Mr. Parker. The payments are still due, same as always. Only the recipient has changed." Lauren spun toward him. "And you think that makes this right?" Gregory adjusted his glasses. "Legal, Mrs. Parker. Not moral. Legal. There's a difference." The words hung heavy in the air. Nathan sank into a chair, rubbing at his temples, while Lauren paced like a caged animal. Marlene's needles clicked softly. "Funny," she said without looking up, "how people get so upset when a rule stops working in their favor." Lauren stopped pacing. "You think this is funny?" Marlene's eyes lifted, calm and razor-sharp. "No, dear, I think it's predictable." Evelyn set down her cup. "Marlene, be kind," she said gently, though the faint curl of amusement at her lips betrayed no sympathy. "They're still learning the rules of consequence." Lauren's voice cracked. "You can't get away with this. I'll take you to court. I'll undo every paper you filed." Gregory exhaled, flipping through the folder in his hands. "I wouldn't advise that. Mrs. Parker's claim predates your marriage, any of your assets, and your parents' refinancing attempts. The contract is airtight." "I'll find something," Lauren insisted. "Some loophole, some clause." "There isn't one," Gregory said, closing the folder with a definitive snap. Lauren's face went pale. Evelyn leaned back, her tone deceptively soft. "Lauren, I admire your persistence, but you've spent your whole life confusing confidence with power. They're not the same thing." Nathan looked between them, his voice quiet but heavy. "Mom, please. You've made your point. Just let it go now." Evelyn's gaze softened on him, the only trace of warmth left. "I'm not punishing you, Nathan. I'm protecting what your father built, what I kept alive when everyone else thought it wasn't worth saving." The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. Then Evelyn's phone buzzed on the table. She reached for it, expecting another call from Clara or a notification from the trust account. Instead, it was an email. Subject line: "Parker Farm transaction. Thank you." Evelyn opened it. The message was polite, cheerful, sent by the young couple who had bought the farm. "We just wanted to thank you and your family for making the sale process so smooth. The property's perfect. We plan to keep the Parker name on the main gate as a tribute." Evelyn smiled faintly and handed her phone to Nathan. "You see? The buyers are happy. The farm's in good hands." Lauren snatched the phone and read the message, her eyes filling with disbelief. "They think you helped with the sale?" "I did," Evelyn said simply. "They don't even know what you've done." "They don't need to," Evelyn said. "The beauty of quiet power is that it doesn't need recognition to exist." Across the room, Marlene chuckled under her breath. "There's your epitaph, Evie." Evelyn ignored her, refilling her cup. "Clara called earlier," she said casually. "She confirmed that all accounts and trusts are locked. Even if you tried to access them, it would take a court order. And by then, every dollar will have already moved." Lauren's lip quivered. "You're cruel." "No," Evelyn replied, her eyes level and unwavering. "I'm consistent." Nathan rose slowly, his voice low. I don't know if I recognize you anymore. Evelyn's gaze lingered on him for a long moment. You never really had to. Outside, the wind rattled the porch swing, a hollow sound against the glass. Evelyn turned back toward the window, the reflection of her own calm face layered over the fading light of the fields she'd fought so long to protect. Behind her, Lauren's voice broke. You can't bury what you've done. Evelyn's reply was quiet, but it carried across the room with the finality of a verdict. No, Lauren, I don't bury things. I archive them. The kettle clicked off behind her, its steam curling upward like punctuation. And from the desk where Gregory had set his folder, the faint vibration of Evelyn's phone signaled a new email. Another thank you note, this time from the realtor, praising how cooperative Mrs. Parker had been through the entire process. Lauren's knees seemed to buckle. She gripped the back of the chair for balance, realization dawning slow and bitter. The world, it seemed, had already moved on, believing Evelyn Parker was the hero of the story. Outside, the hawk circled once more and vanished into the white sky, leaving silence in its wake. The first snow came early that week, thin flakes drifting over Lancaster's fields like feathers shaken loose from the sky. Evelyn watched them fall through her study window, a mug of black coffee cooling beside her as she sorted through the last of the sale proceeds. The farmhouse was silent except for the soft crackle of the wood stove. Her desk was covered in envelopes, each addressed, stamped, and waiting. The Veterans Housing Project, the County Library Expansion Fund, the Lancaster Children's Literacy Initiative. Each organization would soon receive a generous donation from the Henry and Evelyn Parker Charitable Trust, a name she'd written in her husband's memory, but executed entirely on her own. When the phone buzzed, Evelyn didn't even glance at the caller ID. Citizens Bank, came Clara Chen's bright voice. Good morning, Mrs. Parker. Just wanted to confirm today's outgoing transfers from the trust. 3 disbursements, correct? That's right, Evelyn said, sealing the last envelope. Make sure the Veterans Fund posts first. Henry would have liked that. I'll handle it personally. Clara's tone softened. And if you don't mind me saying, control looks good on you. Evelyn allowed herself a quiet chuckle. It always has. Everything else in order? Clara asked. Yes, Evelyn said, glancing at her ledger. The balance is where it should be. The rest will stay in the trust until I decide otherwise. Understood. When the call ended, Evelyn rose and opened the window. The cold air bit her cheeks, but she didn't mind. The farm might have changed hands, but the view, the wide expanse of field and sky, was still hers in spirit. Across town, Lauren sat in her spotless kitchen, staring at her phone. Her nails tapped the counter like distant thunder. On the screen glowed a draft of a post. Betrayed by greed. My family's legacy was stolen by manipulation and lies. She hesitated, thumb hovering over post. The cursor blinked at her like judgment. Then Nathan's voice came from the doorway. Don't. Lauren looked up, defensive. Why not? People deserve to know what she's done. Nathan's tone was flat, tired. No one's going to believe it. The buyers think she's a saint. The bank says it's legal, and the papers already ran the headline about her charitable generosity. Lauren scrolled through the local news feed. There it was. Widow's Windfall. Evelyn Parker donates farm sale to local causes. A picture accompanied it. Evelyn outside the library, shaking hands with the director, smiling that calm, inscrutable smile. Lauren's breath hitched. She turned it into a headline. She whispered. Nathan's shoulders sagged. She turned it into peace. Lauren's thumb hovered one more second, then she deleted the post. The empty screen felt like surrender. By mid-afternoon, Marlene's car crunched up the farmhouse drive. She found Evelyn at the kitchen table, sorting receipts into small, neat piles. The air smelled of nutmeg and ink. "Busy as always," Marlene said, hanging up her coat. "Idle hands are wasted hands," Evelyn replied without looking up. Marlene poured herself a cup of coffee. "You made the paper again. Big smiling photo. Looks like you single-handedly saved half the county." Evelyn smiled faintly. "People like their heroes simple. Let them have one." Marlene sat across from her. "You sure you're at peace with this?" "I didn't do it for peace," Evelyn said. "I did it for balance." Marlene nodded slowly. "And them?" Evelyn sealed another envelope. "They'll live. Humility doesn't kill, it instructs." Marlene sipped her coffee, watching her friend's unflappable calm. "If I didn't know better, I'd think you actually forgave them." Evelyn paused mid-motion. "Forgiveness is a luxury for people who lost less." Outside, the snow thickened, whitening the world in slow layers. That evening, Nathan stopped by, alone this time. His eyes were tired, but his voice was steady. "Mom, I read the article. What you're doing with the money. It's good." Evelyn didn't look up from her paperwork. "You sound surprised." "I guess I am," he admitted. "I thought this was revenge, but it's more than that." She folded one last letter, slid it into its envelope. "Revenge is noisy. This is something quieter, lasting." Nathan studied her for a moment. "You really think Dad would have wanted this?" Evelyn met his gaze. "He'd have wanted me to keep the Landsworth alive, and that's exactly what I've done." For the first time in weeks, Nathan smiled. Small, uncertain, but real. "You're something else, Mom." "I always have been," she said softly. He leaned over and kissed her cheek before leaving. When the door closed behind him, Evelyn exhaled slowly, the kind of release that came only after a battle won completely. She gathered the stack of sealed envelopes, placed them neatly into her leather satchel, and reached for her planner. A new line waited there, written in her careful script. Monday. Schedule trust distribution meetings. Review next phase. Outside, the snow had stopped. The night was still and silver, the world blanketed in quiet absolution. But just as she turned off the lamp, her phone buzzed. A new notification lit up the screen. "Private message. Unknown sender. You may have buried the past, Mrs. Parker, but the county records don't stay quiet forever." Evelyn stared at it, her reflection mirrored in the dark glass, unflinching, unreadable. Then, with the faintest smile, she whispered to herself, "Let them dig." The lamp clicked off, and the house, wrapped in snow and silence, kept its secrets. Monday morning arrived crisp and bright, the kind of winter light that made everything look both fragile and sharp. Evelyn sat at the long oak table, papers spread before her like a general's battle map, while Clara Chen's voice came through the speakerphone, calm and professional. "All accounts are separated, Mrs. Parker. The charitable distributions are under the Foundation's EIN, and your personal trust remains completely private. No crossover possible." "Good," Evelyn said. She drew a careful line through finalized allocations in her planner. "And the estate security filings?" "Filed and recorded with the county. We included the transfer clauses you requested. No amendments can be made without your signature." Evelyn allowed herself a satisfied nod. That should keep everyone honest. Across from her, Marlene watched with a mixture of admiration and awe. "You've built yourself a fortress out of paperwork, Evie. Iron gates made of clauses and signatures." Evelyn smiled faintly. "People build fences to keep others out. I build them to keep the right things in." The phone chimed, a soft tone that cut through the warmth of the room. Clara's voice brightened. "One more thing. Lauren Parker attempted to access the Benson mortgage records this morning. Our fraud department flagged it." Evelyn's tone didn't change. Was she successful? Of course not. She's been formally restricted from all related accounts. Marlene leaned back, grinning. The poor girl still thinks persistence is a key. Evelyn poured herself a second cup of coffee. She doesn't realize the door's already been sealed. By noon, Nathan arrived. Again. Alone. He looked less angry this time, though the exhaustion hadn't left his eyes. He sat at the table glancing over the thick folders spread out before his mother. "Is this all necessary?" he asked quietly. "Necessary and overdue," she replied. He traced a finger along the embossed title on one folder. Parker Charitable Trust. Dad used to say he didn't trust lawyers. Evelyn's smile softened. Your father didn't trust people who didn't read what they signed. Nathan chuckled, the sound half resigned, half amused. You've thought of everything. Not everything, she said, closing one folder and opening another. Just everything that matters. He looked at her a long moment. I used to think you were just being stubborn about the farm, holding on because you didn't know how to let go, but now I get it. Evelyn raised a brow. Do you? He nodded slowly. You weren't fighting to keep the land. You were fighting to make sure what it stood for didn't get erased. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She turned her gaze to the window where sunlight reflected off the snow-covered fields, white stretching endlessly over what had once been hers. Some legacies, she said softly, aren't measured in acres. They're measured in who remembers who built them. Marlene, from her perch at the counter, scribbled something in her notebook and said under her breath, If this were chess, we'd be halfway through the victory lap. Evelyn gave her a sidelong look. It's not chess, Marlene. It's accounting. Later that afternoon, Evelyn met with Gregory and Clara over a conference call. The documents spread across her desk reflected in the glow of her laptop screen. Account locks verified. Beneficiary transfers scheduled. Charitable subtrusts registered. Gregory's voice came through, steady as ever. Everything's finalized. No one, not even your son, not the charities, not the county, can alter these without your written authorization. And the Benson mortgage? Fully absorbed into the personal trust. It's self-sustaining now. Automated payments, routed directly to your account. Clara added lightly, It's cleaner than most banks' systems. Honestly, I should hire you. Evelyn chuckled. I already have a job. Keeping people honest. When the call ended, the farmhouse felt unusually still. The clock on the mantel ticked softly, marking the seconds between victory and reflection. Marlene crossed the room, settling across from her friend. So, she said, voice low, how does it feel to have total control? Evelyn folded her hands. Control isn't what I wanted. Security is. There's a difference. Security for what? For the truth, Evelyn said simply. Marlene studied her, then nodded slowly. You've been patient a long time, Evie. Decades. And you waited until the exact moment when patience turned into precision. It's almost poetic. Evelyn gave a small, humorless smile. Poetry's for people who can afford to feel. I had work to do. They sat quietly after that, the weight of years settling between them like dust on the sunlight. That evening, Evelyn wrote one final note in her ledger. Phase 3. Completion achieved. Assets secured. Legacy protected. She underlined it twice. Just as she was about to close the book, a soft thud came from the porch. Marlene went to check and returned holding a manila envelope. Courier dropped this off. No sender listed. Evelyn slid it open carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, anonymous, County Records Office, Notice of Inquiry, Historical Ownership Review Pending, Parker Estate. Marlene frowned. What does that mean? Evelyn stared at the page, her eyes narrowing slightly. Then she folded it neatly and set it aside. It means, she said quietly, Someone's still digging. Marlene tilted her head. You worried? Evelyn smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. No, I'm curious. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The fields shimmered under a cold blue moonlight. And somewhere out there, in a county office Evelyn had already learned to outmaneuver, someone had just made the mistake of entering her game. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper, polish, and quiet defeat. Lauren Parker sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, her fingers clenched around a pen she hadn't used. Beside her, an attorney, young, overly eager, shuffled through folders like noise could somehow summon confidence. Across the aisle, Gregory Lane was the picture of stillness. His briefcase rested on the table in front of him, unopened, as though he already knew he wouldn't need to argue much today. Evelyn sat beside him, composed in a dark wool coat, her hair pinned neatly, eyes sharp but patient. Marlene waited in the back row, knitting needles tucked into her purse, a faint smile playing at her lips. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she wasn't about to miss the show. When the judge entered, the room rose. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Lauren's attorney began his plea with earnest bluster. Your Honor, my client's parents have been unduly stripped of their property rights through a manipulated financial arrangement orchestrated by Mrs. Evelyn Parker. Gregory rose before the man could finish, his tone dry but steady. Your Honor, if I may save the court's time, Mrs. Parker acted fully within the bounds of Pennsylvania property and lending law. The mortgage in question was never refinanced, never contested, and remains in her legal ownership, filed under the Parker Holding Trust since 2004. The judge adjusted her glasses. Do you have documentation? Gregory opened his briefcase at last, sliding a thick folder across the bench. Contracts, deeds, notarized statements, and the original mortgage transfer. Every page time-stamped and verified. The young attorney tried to object, but the judge held up a hand. Sit down, counsel. I want to see this. Lauren's gaze darted between the bench and Evelyn, disbelief softening into panic. Evelyn, meanwhile, watched the proceedings with the calm of someone reading a familiar book. 10 minutes later, the judge closed the folder, her expression unreadable. Counselor, she said to Lauren's attorney, these documents are ironclad. Your client's claim holds no merit. This mortgage was lawfully owned and exercised. The motion is dismissed with prejudice. Lauren shot to her feet. But she planned this. She waited years just to... The judge's gavel hit once, sharp as a gunshot. Mrs. Parker, this court does not entertain personal grievances. The law is clear. The sound echoed through the chamber, final and heavy. Gregory gathered his papers with the unhurried grace of a man who'd already written the ending. Thank you, Your Honor, he said, bowing slightly before turning to Evelyn. That's the last of it. Evelyn rose slowly, her voice even. Justice rarely needs to shout. Lauren's lawyer muttered something about appeals, but she didn't hear him. Her gaze was locked on Evelyn, who walked past her with quiet authority, the kind that couldn't be borrowed, bought, or broken. Nathan waited by the courthouse steps, his breath fogging in the cold. He looked up as his mother approached. It's over? It's over, Gregory confirmed, tucking the file beneath his arm. The court upheld everything. She's untouchable. Nathan turned to his mother, eyes wide with reluctant admiration. I underestimated you. Evelyn smiled, small and knowing. Most people do. They walked together down the courthouse steps. The snow had begun again. Light, fine flakes swirling in the air like punctuation. Behind them, Marlene emerged, holding a paper bag that smelled faintly of butter and sugar. Victory pie, she announced, lifting it with a grin. Pecan, the good kind. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. You baked during the hearing? Preparation is the cousin of patience, Marlene said, handing her the bag. I figured we'd need something to eat while watching her attorney trip over his closing statement. Nathan laughed under his breath. For the first time in months, it didn't sound heavy. You two really planned every detail, didn't you? Evelyn accepted the bag, warmth from the pastry bleeding into her fingers. We planned enough. Marlene leaned close. So what's next, Commander Parker? The war's won. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the horizon, where the courthouse clock tower loomed against the snow. Wars never end, they just move to quieter battlegrounds. As they reached the parking lot, Gregory's phone buzzed. He read the message, then looked up, his brow furrowed. Evelyn, he said slowly, you might want to see this. He handed her the screen. It was an email, an official notice from the County Historical Review Board. Notice of upcoming audit. Re-examination of property deed records, Parker farm sale, related trusts, and connected mortgage transfers. Inquiry scheduled for January 12th. Nathan frowned. What does that mean? Gregory's tone was cautious. It means someone's still trying to pry open doors you've already locked. Evelyn handed the phone back, her expression unreadable. Then we'll make sure they find nothing but walls. She turned toward the snowy fields beyond the courthouse, her voice low but certain. People confuse security with stillness. Mine has never been still. Marlene nudged her shoulder. You're smiling. Evelyn exhaled, her breath a pale ribbon in the cold. Because I already know how this ends. The snow fell heavier then, blanketing the courthouse steps in white. Behind them, Lauren lingered under the stone archway, watching the three of them disappear into the swirl. Her attorney was talking, something about appeals, delays, but she wasn't listening. Because in her gut, she already knew the truth. Evelyn Parker didn't lose. She just waited long enough for everyone else to trip. And somewhere deep inside, she finally understood what it meant when Evelyn once said, "Patience isn't passivity. It's power in disguise." January sunlight glinted off the snow like polished glass. The storm had passed, leaving the world deceptively clean, every fence line sharp, every field a sheet of white perfection. Evelyn Parker stood at the window, her reflection hovering ghost-like against the frosted pane. On the desk behind her, the latest statement from Citizens Bank lay open. Mortgage account, Benson Residence. All payments redirected per trust authorization. Status, active. She let her eyes rest on that line for a moment, then folded the paper neatly, as if sealing the past inside it. From the kitchen came the faint sound of Marlene humming, accompanied by the smell of butter and sugar. "Coffee's hot," Marlene called, "and I may have outdone myself this time. Cranberry pecan tart. Don't tell Gregory. He'll try to call it payment for services rendered." Evelyn joined her, settling into the chair opposite. "You're celebrating again," she said. Marlene shrugged. "You can't bake victory pies every week without making it a tradition." She cut a slice and pushed it across the table. "Besides, it's official now. Every mortgage payment goes straight to your trust, every donation's been processed, and the whole county thinks you're a saint." Evelyn's lips curved slightly. "I prefer the term efficient." Marlene laughed softly. "Efficient, dangerous, same thing in your hands." On the counter, Evelyn's phone buzzed. Clara Chen's name lit the screen. "Mrs. Parker," Clara began when Evelyn answered, her voice warm. "Just confirming the last round of charitable transfers posted this morning. 3 institutions received the funds exactly as scheduled. You're something of a legend at the branch. People are still talking about your paperwork precision." Evelyn smiled faintly. "A woman's reputation should rest on clean ledgers and clear boundaries." "Well," Clara said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret, "word is, the regional manager wants to nominate you for a community philanthropy feature. You've put half of Lancaster's nonprofits back on solid footing." Evelyn's gaze flicked toward the window again, where the snow had begun to sparkle under the rising sun. "Let them write what they want," she said softly. "Truth doesn't need my permission." When she hung up, Marlene grinned. "So the halo fits now, does it?" Evelyn sipped her coffee. "Halos tarnish easily. I just keep mine polished." Across town, Lauren sat at her parents' kitchen table, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Margaret Benson's eyes were red-rimmed, the way they'd been since the notice arrived. "The bank said they can't reverse it," Margaret whispered. "Not without Mrs. Parker's consent." Lauren stared at the checkbook sitting uselessly between them. "She's made sure we can't even move the money without her knowing. Every account, every payment, it's all under her control now." Her father, Frank, sighed heavily. "Maybe it's time to let it be, Lauren. You can't fight someone who's already won." Lauren's voice cracked. "She's not a hero, Dad. She's a thief with manners." Nathan, standing quietly by the door, spoke for the first time. "No," he said softly. "She's not." Lauren turned, startled. "She's the only one who saw the storm coming," he continued. "And instead of building a house on sand, she built a fortress." Lauren shook her head. "You're defending her now?" Nathan's eyes met hers. Steady, tired, certain. "I finally understand her. She didn't take control from us. We handed it to her the moment we stopped paying attention." The silence that followed was colder than the wind outside. Back at the farmhouse, Evelyn was writing in her journal, a habit she'd revived after decades of neglect. The pages were filled with notes, signatures, names, dates. But between the lines, in her slanted handwriting, were fragments that read like small confessions. Balance achieved. Faith restored. He would have been proud. She paused, pen hovering above the page. A quiet smile touched her lips as she whispered, "It's all in order now. Henry." Marlene entered with 2 glasses of wine. "You talking to ghosts again?" "Only the cooperative ones." They clinked glasses, and Marlene chuckled. "To cooperation, and to clean wins." The phone rang before Evelyn could answer. She reached for it, expecting Clara again, but this time, the voice on the other end belonged to a young reporter. "Mrs. Parker? This is Abigail Rourke from the Lancaster Herald. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Evelyn's tone was polite, cautious. "Not at all, Ms. Rourke. How can I help?" "Well," the reporter said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "We're preparing a feature on remarkable local women, those who've made significant community impacts. Your recent charitable actions and, frankly, your legal savvy have drawn quite a bit of attention. I'd love to schedule an interview." Marlene raised an eyebrow from across the room, mouthing, "Told you so." Evelyn smiled faintly into the phone. "I'm flattered. But I don't think the public needs another story about an old woman with good timing." Abigail laughed nervously. "With respect, Mrs. Parker, your story's hardly ordinary. A widow who turned a family sale into a county legacy? That's the kind of brilliance people want to read about." Evelyn's fingers traced the rim of her glass. "Brilliance," she echoed, her tone distant. "It's just foresight with a little patience." "Well, I'd still love to feature you. Perhaps a photo at the library where you donated the first check." Evelyn hesitated. "Send me your questions first. I prefer to read before I sign anything." "Of course," Abigail said, her voice bright again. "I'll email them this evening." When she hung up, the house fell quiet except for the steady tick of the mantel clock. Marlene broke the silence first. "You going to do it?" Evelyn leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "Maybe. Let them print their fairy tale. Every myth starts with someone misreading the truth." Marlene grinned. "And you'll let them?" Evelyn's smile sharpened. "Control, dear, isn't about stopping the story. It's about deciding which version survives." Outside, the wind shifted, scattering a drift of snow across the porch steps. The sun caught the edge of it, and for a moment, the world looked gold again, like the fields she once owned, the ones that had taught her how to wait, how to endure, how to win without raising her voice. She lifted her glass toward the window, to the reflection that looked back at her. Older, wiser, unbroken. To control, she murmured, the only thing they never learned to take. And from the corner of the room, Marlene raised her glass too. To the woman who taught the county what patience looks like. Evelyn smiled. Patience and precision. The clock struck 6, sharp and clear. And in that quiet, candlelit farmhouse, the woman everyone mistook for a saint prepared to become a legend instead. The article hit newsstands on a Friday morning. Evelyn Parker, the woman who turned loss into legacy. Her photograph, one the Herald had taken in front of the library's new reading wing, graced the front page. Snowlight softened her expression, making her look like someone carved out of calmness itself. By noon, the piece was everywhere, reposted, shared, read aloud in cafes. A pillar of Lancaster County, it said. A woman whose foresight and philanthropy have changed the landscape of her community. Evelyn read it once over coffee, then folded the paper and set it aside. She neither smiled nor frowned. Marlene, sitting across from her, was grinning like a proud co-conspirator. I told you they'd make you sound like the county's guardian angel. I never asked them to, Evelyn said. Maybe not, Marlene replied. But saints don't pick their miracles. The crowd does. Evelyn stirred her coffee. Miracles are accidents that favor the prepared. Across town, Lauren sat at her kitchen counter, scrolling through the comments beneath the article. What a remarkable woman. Wish more folks handled their affairs like Mrs. Parker. Lancaster's very own legend. Her jaw tightened. Legend, she muttered. You mean thief. She drafted a post, hands shaking as she typed. You're all praising a woman who manipulated her family, took what wasn't hers, and left others ruined. Don't believe everything you read. She hit post, her pulse racing. Within minutes, notifications pinged. A few hearts, then confusion, then silence. Someone replied, You sound bitter, Mrs. Parker. Another, Funny how the loudest critics are always related to the great ones. Lauren's breath caught. By evening, her post had vanished, flagged for defamatory content. Whether it was the paper, the lawyer, or fate itself, she couldn't tell. But the erasure stung more than any insult. Her reflection in the dark screen looked small, blurred, unanchored. Back at the farmhouse, the kettle whistled. Evelyn poured hot water over Earl Grey leaves as Marlene set out scones and marmalade. Afternoon light filled the kitchen, warm and golden, bouncing off the brass fixtures and the polished wood of the table. You've got mail, Marlene said, nodding to the growing pile of envelopes. All thank you notes. 1 from the Children's Hospital, 2 from the library, and, oh look, another from the Veterans Project. They're naming a wing after Henry. Evelyn's hands stilled. After him? Marlene smiled. They wanted to call it the Parker Wing, but I told them you'd prefer it under his name. For the first time in days, Evelyn's composure cracked into something gentle. Thank you, she said quietly. That's how it should be. They sat for a while, sipping tea in companionable silence. Outside, the snow was beginning to melt, revealing the dark earth beneath, rich, alive, waiting. Marlene finally spoke. Do you ever think they'll understand? Lauren, I mean. Maybe even Nathan. Evelyn's gaze drifted toward the window. Understanding isn't the same as forgiveness, and I don't need either. Marlene chuckled softly. You sound almost satisfied. Evelyn's lips curved. I'm not satisfied. I'm secure. Later that week, Nathan stopped by with a stack of envelopes from the charities. He looked different, steadier somehow. as though the turbulence had passed through him and left something stronger behind. "These came for you," he said, handing them over. "They want you to attend the gala next month. All the organizations you donated to are honoring their benefactors of the year." Evelyn opened one letter, skimmed it, then folded it again. "Tell them I appreciate the thought, but I don't need a plaque." Nathan nodded. "You're still in control." "Huh?" She smiled faintly. "Always." He hesitated before speaking again. "I used to think you were cold, but now I get it. You weren't protecting the land. You were protecting us, even from ourselves." Evelyn looked at him, her expression unreadable. "If you finally understand that, Nathan, then maybe the farm wasn't the only thing worth saving." He left soon after, leaving behind the faint scent of winter air and wood smoke. That evening, Clara Chen called. "Just wanted to check in, Mrs. Parker. Everything's cleared perfectly. The trusts, the donations, no disputes left open." "Thank you, Clara," Evelyn said. "You've managed something most people can't," Clara continued. "Half in admiration, half in awe. You taught them respect, without ever raising your voice." Evelyn's laugh was soft but real. "Respect isn't taught, Clara. It's taken back, quietly." As the call ended, Marlene entered carrying a fresh teapot and that ever-present notebook she pretended wasn't for keeping score. "Well," she said, pouring the tea, "you've conquered money, the law, and public opinion. What's left?" Evelyn took a slow sip before answering. "Peace. The kind they can't fake online." Marlene grinned. "And you've earned it." Evelyn looked into her cup, the steam curling like a secret. "No one earns peace, Marlene. They just hold it tightly enough that no one else can take it away." Outside, dusk settled over the snow-covered hills, painting everything in shades of blue and silver. The farmhouse lights glowed against the dark, a beacon of order in a world that loved its chaos. Then, a sharp knock broke the quiet. Evelyn and Marlene exchanged a glance. On the doorstep stood a courier, his breath fogging in the cold. "Delivery for Mrs. Parker," he said, handing her a heavy envelope embossed with the seal of the Lancaster County Review Board. Marlene frowned. "More praise?" Evelyn slid it open. Her eyes moved across the page, the faintest smile forming as she read. "Notice of inquiry closure. All previous audits dismissed. No irregularities found. However, attached are copies of all records made public for historical archive purposes." Marlene raised an eyebrow. "Everything's public now?" Evelyn folded the letter slowly. "Let them see," she said. "There's nothing left to hide. Only proof of what patience can build." The two women stood in the doorway as twilight deepened, the wind sweeping across the fields that once carried every fight, every loss, every quiet victory. Marlene exhaled, smiling. "Guess they finally learned who held the real power." Evelyn nodded once. "And who never had to shout to keep it." The letter fluttered in her hand like a flag, white against the dark. But her eyes, steady and knowing, were already fixed beyond it, on something still coming, something she'd been expecting all along. The thaw came late that year, slow and stubborn, the land reluctant to wake after everything it had endured. But when it did, when the ice cracked and the first soft winds brushed through the bare trees, the farm, though no longer hers on paper, began to breathe again under Evelyn Parker's gaze. From her porch, she could see the distant barns, their new owners already hard at work. Fences mended, tractors moving, life humming where silence once stood. She watched without bitterness. The soil didn't care whose name sat on the deed. It still knew who had kept it alive when others would have let it rot. On the table beside her, a stack of envelopes waited. Each one carried her neat handwriting, each one addressed to a charity that had once stood on the edge of failure. She slid the final check into its envelope, sealed it, and stamped it with her initials, ELP, the same way Henry used to sign every harvest ledger. Full circle, she murmured, setting down her pen. Marlene appeared in the doorway, her ever-present grin softened by something like affection. If there's a heaven for women like us, it's probably just a quiet room with a hot pot of tea and every man who ever doubted us forced to watch. Evelyn chuckled. Then we've already arrived? They moved to the kitchen, where the kettle was already singing. Steam fogged the window, blurring the view of the fields into a watercolor of white and gray. Evelyn poured carefully, the scent of bergamot rising like memory. To peace, Marlene said, lifting her cup. Evelyn shook her head. To precision. They clinked china, a soft, perfect sound that filled the quiet like punctuation. Across town, Nathan sat at his desk, surrounded by printouts from the trust filings he'd requested out of curiosity. And, maybe, guilt. Each line, each clause, confirmed what he already knew. His mother had thought of everything. The charitable allocations, the subtrusts, the automatic mortgage transfers, the inheritance shield that bypassed Lauren entirely. Every penny accounted for, every door locked before anyone else even reached for the handle. Lauren entered, pale and restless. You've seen it, haven't you? He nodded slowly. She owns the mortgage, the trust, and the narrative. There's nothing left to fight. Lauren dropped into the chair opposite him, her voice brittle. She didn't just take the farm, she rewrote the map. Nathan looked at her, his expression weary but not unkind. She didn't take it, Lauren. We gave it away. She just made sure it meant something after we did. Lauren turned away, tears glinting in her eyes. I can't believe she got away with all of this. She didn't get away with anything, he said. She built it, brick by brick. And we didn't notice until it was already a cathedral. He stood, gathering the papers into a single stack. You can hate her if you need to, but you should know what she did clean. Lauren said nothing. When he left the room, her reflection in the window looked back at her, small, distorted, and haunted by a woman she could never outplay. Back at the farmhouse, Evelyn opened her ledger one last time. The page read, Parker Farm, sale complete. Benson Mortgage, secured. Trust disbursements, finalized. Accounts, immutable. She set down her pen, folded her hands, and exhaled. A knock came at the door. When she opened it, Clara Chen stood there, cheeks flushed from the cold, holding a slim folder. Mrs. Parker? She said, smiling. I thought you'd want to see this in person. First round of distributions has cleared. The library, the Veterans Project, the Children's Foundation, they all sent thank you letters. You've officially changed the county's financial footprint. Evelyn accepted the folder, flipping through the reports, her eyes scanning the figures with quiet satisfaction. Everything as planned? Better, Clara said. You've made history without a single headline you didn't approve. Marlene appeared behind her, arms folded, smirking. Of course she did. That's what happens when you let a woman run the numbers. Clara laughed. You know, the regional manager said something yesterday. He said Mrs. Parker doesn't play the game. She writes the rules. Evelyn smiled faintly. He's not wrong. When Clara left, the two women returned to the kitchen, the air thick with the scent of lemon tea and something deeper. Peace earned, not gifted. Marlene leaned back in her chair. You've tied every knot, sealed every vault, and even turned the town into your fan club. What now? Evelyn's eyes drifted toward the window, where the horizon glowed with late winter light. Now, I stop building. I just watch. Marlene tilted her head. Watch what? The land, Evelyn said softly. It still remembers who loved it. As the day slipped into evening, she stepped outside alone. The air was sharp, clear, endless. Down the hill, the barn stood under the soft glow of the new owner's floodlights. Somewhere, she imagined the echoes of her husband's laughter, the low hum of the tractor, the warmth of summer nights when the fields were still theirs. She didn't mourn. She measured how far patience had carried her, measured how quietly power could settle when handled by steady hands. She returned inside, where the teapot waited, still warm. Marlene had gone home, leaving behind 2 cups and a note scribbled in her looping handwriting, to the last woman standing. Evelyn smiled, sat down, and opened her journal one final time. The last page was blank, clean, waiting. She uncapped her pen, wrote 1 line, and underlined it once. They convinced my son to sell my farm. Neither knew I owned her parents' mortgage. She set the pen down and closed the book with care. Outside, the night deepened over Lancaster, the fields silver in the moonlight. And though the farm no longer bore her name, every inch of it still bent quietly, irrevocably, toward Evelyn Parker. The woman who had learned, better than anyone, that power doesn't shout. It signs, it seals, it waits.